From behind, that's what you see here, the attachment of the meniscus on the meniscus, on the posterior tibial plateau. And if you go for a sagittal section, that's what it looks like, a nice meniscotibial attachment, also recently nicely published in a study by Nick De Filippo from Roppler Pratt's group, where you see the meniscotibial ligament and the synovial membrane overlying this. And actually the lesions are located in the zone 0, so the meniscosynovial zone of the Warren classification. And this is important to state because there has been some confusion in some papers in the literature. How to diagnose these lesions? Actually, you can do it through an intercondylar view with a 30-degree scope, and that's what you see then here on the right. The problem is that you don't see the entire ramp if you go from there. And what you can see in some lesions is actually these two pictures here. On the left, you see this empty wall sign. This is pretty typical, and the cleavage between the posterior horn and the meniscotibial attachment. On the right, you see a nice crater. So these are really big lesions, and these are the ones you need to stabilize. When you get in, and if you're not sure, you can come in with a needle where you can palpate this area, and even if you don't see the lesions, you sometimes can feel that you have a direct contact with this needle on the tibial plateau, especially if it's around the corner here with a 30-degree scope. So if you're in doubt, do a posterior medial viewing portal and go for a direct posterior visualization. For this, you might use a Wissinger rod, which can be very useful in these cases. Now, if you go for high posterior medial view, that's what you get. And on the right side, this is actually not the shoulder. This is the posterior part of the ramp and of the medial tibial plateau. Actually, really looks like a shoulder, and that's what you get if you have an injury. These are again, you see the empty wall and the ramp tissue, which hangs down from this like a curtain, which is detached from its attachment on the window actually. And here again, an entire view of the posterior ramp lesion, and you generally have a trend to underestimate the size. So if you debride these lesions, you see that they will get very big, and that's why they have a kind of, they probably have an important impact and should be repaired. Now, how did they occur? That's something we still don't know actually to 100%, but there are signs which go into the direction that it could be liaised with a medial subluxation, actually, like you have in the shoulder, like in the glenohumeral dislocation, where you have the femoral condyle, which goes over basically the posterior corner of the tibial plateau. And there are some studies who detected the displacement with up to 25 millimeters displacement at the moment of the injury. And that's something you can see nicely on these videos, which have recently been published in Sports Health. You see here the subluxation, it's really like a shoulder dislocation, and here the reposition. And I show you another case here, very nice videos coming from Bologna around Stefano Zaffanini's group. Again, dislocation, and here the reposition, and maybe the last one, also very nice, the reposition. And these are the injury types where these ramp lesions may occur. It's not a typical valgus collapse, but it's really a dislocation. And how frequent are these lesions in comparison to other ACL-associated meniscus lesions? Actually, that's something we just published in KSSTA. And you see that these ramp lesions are more frequent than the lesions of the medial meniscus body, actually. So the lesions which are located in the zones 1 to 3 of the Warren classification. So they are regularly underestimated. Other studies show the prevalence roughly between 15 and 25 to 30%, depending on the types of patients you see. What we did also identify is that there is an association between the ramp lesions and patients who suffered from a high energy trauma and patients who present with a high degree pivot shift. So these are more like complex ACL injuries. It's not the small ACL, the isolated ACL injuries you treat. These are other or different injury mechanisms. So the question, should they be repaired? Well, probably. especially if you look at this video from behind. Again, a posterior view where we go, bring the knee into extension, and what happens is that you have a big gapping here the closer you get to extension. And so you can imagine that in this case, if you fix them from anteriorly, they may not heal, and they probably certainly do not heal without a proper direct repair. So what do we want as a repair? Well, you see here, we want to actually an anatomic repair, which is an advanced surgical technique, an advanced arthroscopic technique. You need to get familiar here with shoulder instruments. You need to know that you need 20 minutes of extra OR time to do this. You need to be familiar with a posterior portal placement, then identify a tissue, debride the tissue, reposition it, and do a proper repair. And here, again, you need to know about shoulder instruments and about arthroscopy.